protests and the changes that the government made. And we'll discuss the right to water plans nationally, the protest on the 31st, and also what's happening with the meters after they've started to come into our area. Right, just to start on what happened at the end of last year. First of all, as you all know, most of you were involved, we had 3 enormous protests over a period of 3 months with unprecedented numbers of people taken to the streets. Probably the biggest of those being the one on November the 1st, where all over the country there was probably 200,000 people marching in about 100 locations across the country. And then of course we had the big demonstration on December the 10th. Numbers are being disputed. The media said 30,000. I think we all know that the figure was probably closer to 100,000. And there was a lot of games being played by the guards that day in redirecting people away from Merrion Square and all sorts of stuff. But we had reports when Merrion Square was completely packed, and that's 30 or 40,000 people alone, that there was people backed up all the way down to O'Connell Bridge and in all the streets on the way up. So it was massive. And faced with that, the government obviously said they were listening and were introducing a new regime. And we should say that the changes that have been made certainly show that the protest movement had a big impact and frightened the living daylights out of the government. And they have been forced to back down on a number of things. And I'll go through those briefly, but certainly our view is, and I suspect the view of most people here is, that although they back down on a number of things, that's not good enough. We're not looking for concessions, we're looking for the scrapping of the water charges and the dismantling of Irish Water. And we should put that as a formal proposal to this meeting, in case anybody has any different view on it. But I think it is important in messages, in assemblies that are happening all over the country in the current weeks, that the message goes out very clearly in the new year that we don't accept that what the government has done is sufficient, and the only thing that will satisfy us is the scrapping of the charges completely and the dismantling of Irish Water. But just so we are clear what the government have actually done, they have, faced with the outrage about the PPS numbers, they've withdrawn the requirement that you give PPS numbers. Although people will still have to prove how many kids they have and how many people is in the family, but you don't have to give PPS numbers. They have also reduced the cost of the charges by, I just have my figures right, from €4.88 per litre, isn't it? To 370 per litre, so just so per thousand litres. They've also introduced a water conservation grant, which is a joke because it has nothing to do with water conservation. They're planning to give it to every house in the country, €100, if you agree to register with Irish Water by the 2nd of February, and that will be paid then at the end of the year. So it's a bribe in order to get people to agree to pay the charges, which they are now saying they're going to cap until 2018 at €160 per year for a single person, or €260 per year for anybody else. And they say they will cap those charges. So water conservation anyway doesn't even come into it because it's just a flat charge. But if you agree to register, they will give €100 back against that at the end of the year. So that's a straightforward bribe in order to try and get people to register. The other, yeah, I mean, those are, I suppose, the main changes. Now, they're also saying that you can somewhat reduce the cost of even that bill if your usage is less than the allowances that they're allowing for. And you might have heard your woman Elizabeth Arnett on the radio in the last few days saying, yeah, if you use less water, you can even further reduce your bill. But I think we should be clear that that is rubbish when you look at what the actual usage of an ordinary family, an average family, would be. The allowance that they're allowing is approximately 30,000 litres per year. And just to put that into context, if you have one shower per day for a year, you will use 12,775 litres. If you wash your teeth twice a day, that will be 1,460 litres. And if you're flushing the toilet 4 times a day, that will be 13,140 litres. That's just for those 3 things. That adds up to 27,000 litres just for those things. So that's not taking into account cups of tea, glasses of water, the dishwasher, the washing machine, and all the other possible uses for water, right? So the idea that you can reduce your usage to reduce your bill is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. In fact, once the cap is removed, your bills will just shoot up massively. And what is clearly the government are doing is, faced with the protest, they're trying to knock the whole thing back until after the next election. And they've also said the penalties for non-payment won't be applied until July 2016. So that if people don't pay or don't register, the penalty will not be applied until July 2016, which is conveniently after the general election. So that really what they're hoping is to give a few bribes to get you to register, not to impose penalties now, which could infuriate people, and hope that they can get themselves through the next general election, which could take place. It could take place this year. It can't take place any later than March of next year. Although there's significant rumours now circulating in Dáil Éireann that it could be actually September that the election will be. So they hope to diffuse things, to wait us out, to hope the protests lose momentum, to bribe us a little bit, and then they'll hit us hard, of course, after the next general election if they're still there. That's their thing. And it is worth noting as well that although they're saying they're going to cap the charges till 2018, Alan Kelly said, as a little footnote on that they will review that in 2017. So really, it's just anything to try and diffuse the protest now until they hope to get themselves back into power next year. And then everything will be off the table. They also said, although again we don't believe them, that they are now giving firm assurances that there will be no privatisation of Irish water. But I think there's 2 things to say about that. First of all, it's rubbish because effectively Irish water the privatisation process has started now. In law, in the bill that was passed, Irish water is a private legal entity. The major shareholder, the only shareholder is the minister, but it is legally, under the legislation, a private entity, as opposed to the local authorities, which are public bodies, where we have some influence over the decisions they make. We can elect councillors, change councillors and so on. In Irish Water we will have absolutely no control whatsoever because it is legally a private legal entity. And if you look at where all the money has gone so far in Irish Water, it has gone to private consultants and private contractors. So all the people who are putting in the meters are private companies. All the people who set up the billing systems and the administration and much of the work is already outsourced to private companies. So it might be nominally owned by the minister, but in reality it's a private legal entity and it is effectively being hollowed out from the inside by private consultants and private contractors. And the other thing is that the guarantee that they give in terms of full public ownership being maintained is what they are calling a plebiscite. That they wouldn't privatise it unless there was first a plebiscite, which means a vote of all of the people, but it has no constitutional significance. It's not a referendum which would copper fasten public ownership within the constitution of the state. It's just effectively a consultative vote which would not even be binding on a government. So they could have a vote, people could say we don't want privatisation, and they could still go ahead. There would be nothing to stop them, and particularly a future government, from actually legally privatising it. So these assurances are sops and tokens, but don't actually prevent the privatisation of Irish Water. So for all those reasons, we think we shouldn't buy into these bribes, and we should continue the resistance to the water charges and to Irish Water. But that is a decision people here have to make. On the issue of like what the campaign is doing, there's going to be demonstrations all over the country on January the 31st. Now, unfortunately, in my opinion, not all of the components of Right to Water are involved in organising those. The unions who are involved in Irish Water have made a decision that, for reasons I don't fully understand, to be absolutely honest with you, they're not going to be directly involved. They're supporting them, they'll advertise them, but they're not going to be directly involved in organising those demonstrations. They do say that they are going to agree with us in the next couple of weeks before the 31st for another big demonstration before the bills come out in April, and we welcome that, but it does mean the demonstrations on the 31st may not be as big as some of the ones we saw at the end of last year. But certainly, as far as I'm concerned, we still need to build for those demonstrations and then use them as a springboard for what we hope will be much bigger demonstrations before April, which will be organised jointly with the trade unions, the political pillar, the community groups, and all the rest of it. So if people have further questions about that, we can answer them. But the current state of play is the demonstrations that are happening on the 31st will be primarily organised by the local groups, community groups, campaign groups, and some of the political groups involved in Irish Water. Here in our area, we need to make a decision what we want to do. Do we want to march locally, as a lot of areas are doing? Do we want to go into town because there's a demonstration in town? Or do we want to do both? In other words, have a demonstration here in Dún Laoghaire maybe in the morning, and then whoever wants to go into town in the afternoon do that. So that's a decision. I personally think we should allow for both, because some people will find it easier to march locally, but other people may want to go into town as well. So we should try and facilitate both of those things. But again, that's a decision for people here to make today. But I certainly think it is important that one way or another we organise for significant protests on the 31st. And the last point then is about the meters. And somebody from Deansgrange should maybe talk in a little bit more detail about this. But for the first time, Irish Water have started to attempt to put meters into our area, in the Deansgrange area. And campaign activists and, most importantly, local residents have got out, resisted that, and after a few days of protesting and a standoff, Irish Water have disappeared for now from St. Vincent's Villas and St. Vincent's Park. But it's clear from that they have started to move into our area. So one of the things we need to discuss is how we're going to respond to that, and we're proposing that we need to just beef up and remind people about the need for vigilance and meter watching in each locality with phone trees and text networks and so on, so that if Irish Water appear in any area, that an alert goes out, and that people who want to oppose the meters get support in doing so. Although we do want to, I think, stress that ultimately it will be a decision of each local community and the people in that community as to whether they stop the meters or not. And that's a decision people have to make. Certainly we believe it's a good thing to try and stop the metering process, because it will cause problems for Irish Water, it will make life more difficult for them, it galvanises the local community and keeps momentum in the campaign. But again, that is a decision people have to make for themselves at a local level. So that's just a brief report. I think Shane was going to say a few words, were you?
Yeah,
briefly, and then Cormac maybe was going to talk a little bit about what happened in Deansgrange, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions.
We haven't met since November. So
Can you hear at the back?
Speak up.
Can you turn this? Hold on one second.
It's on. Oh, there you go. Sorry. Okay. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking part in the protest in December, because we haven't met since then, and I think everyone will agree it was a phenomenal occasion, and like all the Right to Water protests, it's predominantly peaceful and a joyous occasion, and almost like a celebration. and I know from hearing back from a few people involved in the media that that is a real big bear burger to a lot in government circles, because they want trouble, they want, you know, violence, and we haven't delivered it yet, and we're not going to. Just want to fill you in on the work. We were doing a bit of preparation work for this local assembly, myself and a few other members out of Sinn Fein. We carried out a survey last week. We surveyed about 250 to 300 people last week down in central Dunleary, and I thought the results were quite interesting in themselves. You know, in terms of people being satisfied with the implementation of water charges, 90% weren't. That wasn't too surprising. Asking people have they engaged with the right to water protests, only actually just under 30% of people had engaged in any of the right to water protests wherever they had, whether they were locally or nationally. So I think that kind of pointed, you know, the potential to grow this campaign a lot further and to involve a lot more people in our communities. Asking people have they actually registered, and the figure that I see RT released a poll result there during the week, and ours were similar enough, but about 55% of the people surveyed hadn't actually registered with Irish Water as yet. And then when we came to the question of payment, you know, asking people will they pay their bills when they get them, when they're sent out on April Fool's Day, 50% of people said yes, 30% of people said no, and 20% of people were unsure in and around those figures. So just to feed that back to you, because I think what I see from that is that there's going to be many tactics in defeating these charges. I think the boycott is one part of it, opposing the meter installations is another, but getting feet and people out on the streets in large numbers is our biggest tool, and it's been our greatest asset so far. So really, I know looking around the room you may say, okay, it's only a third of people that was here the last time. I don't think we've advertised or we've got as many leaflets out around today's event. I'm not actually sure if any leaflets went out. I think it was more through social media and texting and things like that. So I think although I 100% support, I'll be there on the 31st of January, I think we need to set a date even further afield to allow us, you know, ourselves as activists and people for profit and Sinn Fein, any other group involved in the right to water locally, to get leaflets in the door, because not everyone's on social media and not everyone, you know, responds to emails or even looks at their emails. So if we want to have a really big demonstration, and that's my only fear with any demonstrations, you know, that it's smaller than the last. I think your protests need to build and build and build. So I think and it's really for people here in this room to decide a date. I agree that we'll get direction from the Central Right to Water Committee, but we as a group here today could decide a date a little further down the line as well, and then start building from it from today. So that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chef. Cormac, do you want to say a few words just about what the Deansgrange situation?
I won't keep it long. It's just, I suppose this week has seen it all kick off here in the area. But maybe the groundwork started well before Christmas there, just with conversations. Just grew up. I'm from Rockford Park myself, and it was just, the process began just with conversations with other neighbours, friends in the community about the water charges and what we thought should be done, and should we make a stand in our local community and our estate. So it actually just started, what started as Rockford Against Water Charges, leafleted the houses in the estate and put around a window poster for people to put up in the windows, and the response there was really good. And then kind of word conversations again just came through. Friends and family in other estates around the area liked what they saw and said that there'd be an appetite for that in the likes of Finton's Park, Finton's Villas, Rory O'Connor, Macintosh. So gradually it just developed organically into Deansgrange Against Water Charges. So that was back in the autumn before Christmas, putting around leaflets, window posters. If any of you live in those areas, you may have received the leaflets, or it may have got lost in a deluge of advertisements. So I don't know if you got them or not. But that was the beginnings of it. And then this week it really just kicked off. Then on Tuesday the call went out from Finton's Park that Irish Water were installing meters in there. So what initially there was 4 activists. I arrived, there was 5. There was people jumping in holes to stop the installations happening. And within half an hour, what looked like a very well entrenched operation on the part of Farrens installing the meters, within half an hour that was halted. Then on Wednesday morning, by the end of Tuesday then, people from the area and then friendly activists from close by were arriving. So by the end of Tuesday, there was probably about 7 or 8 of us there before we headed off and made an arrangement to meet up the next morning. So then Wednesday morning we arrived up, we were there waiting for them when they came up at the Europa chipper entrance to Finton's Park, and when they came in, we blocked the van we blocked their heavy machinery from proceeding any further, and then we also blocked them from leaving, so they weren't able to go off anywhere else to do their dirty work. So we held the van for the whole day, so they didn't get a single meter installed in Finton's Park that day. So then on Thursday and Friday there was a no-show from them, but we stayed out all throughout the day just to remain vigilant, to let the residents see that this was ongoing. And we had a very successful meeting. There was a meeting called for Thursday night, a community meeting. It was held in the community hall there in Finton's Park, and there was well over 30 people there. There was probably about 35, 36, 37, and of that number, looking through names and that afterwards, there was about 26 that were from the local Deansgrange area. So that was really heartening. There was, again, friendly activists from outside who were very welcome as well. But it was really heartening to see that there was 20, 25, 26 people, just like myself, local family people, residents of the area, turning up to say their bit and to get involved was very heartening. So now the work, looking into the future now, we're going to have to, the trick is now to keep it up, to build on that meeting, to continue to try and invigorate people to come and